Hi friends, for this video for the Simple Sentiment series, I'm going to show you basic card layering and how to create your card bases. Generally, this is something that's overlooked, but when you're starting out with stamping, not everybody knows how to do this, and it can be intimidating and very frustrating, when in fact it's really easy peasy. So let me show you how to get started. Now, most cards measure 5.5 inches by 4 1/4, which is basically a piece of cardstock which measures 11 inches by 8.5 inches, cut in half. So you will get 2 cards out of each piece of 11 by 8.5 cardstock. Now, there's 2 ways you can cut this piece of paper. Both ways are fine. Both ways are going to make your cards measure 5.5 by 4 1/4. The only difference in how you cut it will be in how the card opens, which you will see. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to slide our paper into our paper trimmer. This is the Stampin' Up! Paper trimmer. I am lining my 8.5 inch side down along my 5.5 inch mark. I'm going to go ahead and cut it. So I now have 2 pieces of 5.5 by 4 1/4. So when you fold it in half, it measures 4 1/4 by 5.5. Now the other way you can cut your piece of cardstock, again it's 11 by 8.5, is you can cut it down along the 11 inch side. So you would then line up in the middle, which is 4 1/4. So we're going to line up our 11 inch side along our 4 1/4 mark and cut that. So again, you have 2 pieces, which will give you 2 cards. And when you fold that in half, again you have a card that measures 5.5 by 4 1/4. So they measure exactly the same no matter how you cut your cardstock. The only difference is how they open. See? That's the only difference. So your card base measures 4 1/4 by 5.5. So you want a piece that measures 4 by 5 1/4. So I take a piece of Fairy Vanilla cardstock. This could be scrap or it could be your full sheet that you've cut down. So you're just going to cut it down so it measures 4 by 5 1/4. You see? And it measures really well. So let me show you, let's say I want to have another piece of cardstock on top of my Fairy Vanilla. I just want to show you how you can continue building on your layers. I'm again going to work in the 1/4 inch measurements. So I want my next piece to be 1/4 inch smaller than my Fairy Vanilla. So if you remember, my Fairy Vanilla measures 5 1/4 by 4. So I need another piece of cardstock to measure 5 by 3 3/4, which is exactly 1/4 inch smaller along both sides. So I have a piece of cardstock here, and I'm just going to line it up at the 3 3/4 mark and cut it. Turn it around onto the long side, and I want this to measure 4. Beg your pardon, I want this to measure 5. So when I line this up, it will measure just perfectly to fit inside. Okay? We'll do one more layer to build on top of this. And again, we want it to be 1/4 inch smaller. So that means if my last one was 3 3/4, this one needs to be 3 1/2. And the last cut was 5, so it needs to be 4 3/4. Okay. So I've got all my layers building on top of each other. Sorry, I got them a bit crooked here for you. Hang on. Alright, so everything measures and fits really nice. And then you would just stamp your images and start adhering on. And I'll show you the finished card with this when we're done. I want to show you another way of layering. Now for this, I've just grabbed just a stamp that I just happen to have on my desk and an ink pad, so nothing's going to necessarily coordinate, but I just want to show you a different way that you can build your card. So let's say we already have our card base and we already have a layer. Now we want to add our image. So I'm going to go ahead and just stamp my image, and for this example I'm just using Blackberry Bliss and I have a piece of scrap Fairy Vanilla. So then I stamp my image. Alright, so now you could just literally eyeball it, and you could trim around the edge and then layer it onto a piece of scrap. So actually I'll go ahead and do that just to show you, because you're going to pick the way that you're most comfortable with. There's never a right or wrong way. There's just a lot of different options for you to choose from, and you just pick what you're most comfortable with. Okay, so I've trimmed that. I could actually go a little bit closer to the edge. Whoops. Okay, so I have my image, and I'm going to put some snail adhesive on it, and I'm going to just eyeball it to how I like it on that piece of cardstock, and then trim away the excess. And again, I'm just using my eyes to measure it. Okay, so there I have it layered. So now I would go ahead and just place that onto my card. Okay, now I'm going to show you another way you can do that. You can measure your block and then stamp out your cardstock accordingly, and then layer it on that way. Or, let me backtrack, you could actually measure your stamp, and whatever that measures, right? So this measures, let's see, okay, so the actual stamped image measures approximately 1 3/4 by 3.5. So I would cut out a piece of Whisper White cardstock or vanilla cardstock, whatever you're stamping this on, to that measurement, and then I would cut out a piece of cardstock that measures 1/4 inch bigger than that. So I have a friend who has another way of measuring her cardstock when it comes to layering. So I'm going to show you what she does. So she stamps her image, and she does exactly what I did a second ago, where she just trims it according to just eyeballing it. Okay, then what she does is she takes her cardstock and she places it on her cardstock, and she uses her fingernail and she makes a mark with her fingernail along the top and the bottom. And I don't know if you can see that, but there's a little mark there and a little mark here, and then she lines those marks up on her paper cutter, and then it fits in perfect there as well. So if you're not good with fractions and measurements, you might want to try the fingernail technique. So just kind of make an indent with your nail, or you can use a pencil and mark it and do it that way, and then you've got it to build onto your card. Another way you can measure is to use the Stampin' Up! Framelits. These framelits do all the measuring for you, so you don't even have to think about it. You just grab the sizes you need based on the images of the stamp that you're using, and then place the framelit on top of your image, cut out a piece of cardstock or designer series paper with the next size up, and you can then build on them and layer that way. So that's a really quick way to do layering, and of course we have all different shapes and different framelits for you to choose from. And another way you can do your layering that's really quick and easy is having our punches do the layering for you. So of course this is the Stampin' Up! Old style of punches. I still have them, I still use them. And this measures 1 1/4 and this measures 1 3/8, and they layer on top of each other perfectly. So I'll just show you that now. So you see, of course, everything's layered perfectly. So just having the right tools makes all the difference. So the number one thing you want to do is invest in your good paper trimmer, which I used my Stampin' trimmer earlier when I started the video, and I will add a link on my blog for today's post that will show you a video from Stampin' Up! That shows you exactly all the benefits of that Stampin' trimmer and why it's so darn great. Okay, I'm going to quickly put these cards together. I am taking my hardwood background stamp and I'm inking it up in the Blackberry Bliss. And honestly, my friends, I just grabbed the quickest colors that I had handy, so if you're wondering why I have a purple hardwood background, it's just because that's what I'm doing. I like to use my background stamps this way when they're face up, inked, and I put my paper down on top and a piece of computer paper to rub it on top. I just prefer to do it that way myself. Alright, so we're just layering that right on top of my card. And layering that right on top. Really easy, fast card. Again, this is all about simple, and I'm just showing you the basics of the card layering today. So now we had this one here. Alright, I'm going to put that onto our orange cardstock. Layer that down. Down. Now this piece I'm going to add some texture to it, and I'm going to use an embossing folder. Because this has dots in it, I'm going to go ahead and use the folder with the dots, and I'm going to place my cardstock right inside the folder. For this card I'll use my Texture Boutique. Now you can pick this up from Stampin' Up, or you can use our Big Shot and put it through that way, but I'm just going to go ahead and crank it through. So when I open it up, I have a really neat texture here. Layer that onto my base. And there's my card. So 2 cards made really fast, showing you basic ways of layering using your stamps, your paper trimmer, your punches, your fingernail technique, eyeballing technique. It's whatever you're comfortable with. But I really hope that helps you as you start out with your journey with stamping and building your cards. Thanks for watching, and happy stamping!